Welcome, everyone. Today, we're going to discuss the great AI miscalculation, which is the belief that simply having access to AI equals a strategic advantage. It does not. AI access has quickly become common, and the true advantage now belongs to organizations that align the technology with their mission, infrastructure, and workforce. The real risk is not that your company will fail to buy AI, but that you will adopt it faster than your infrastructure and leadership systems can absorb it. To understand the risks we face today, we must look back to the 1980s. During that time, AI, specifically expert systems, was promised as a solution to transform business. Governments poured billions into massive research efforts, such as the US Strategic Computing Initiative and Japan's fifth generation computer project. However, expectations massively outran actual systems' readiness and capabilities, leading to a collapse in the market and a developmental freeze known as the AI winter. The technology itself hadn't failed. The failure occurred because organizations assumed narrow successes could easily generalize across messy and changing business environments. Zycon. So let's look at a major success story from the era. Zycon. Developed for Digital Equipment Corporation, Zycon was an export system used to configure complete VAX computer system orders. It was a massive financial success, reportedly saving DEC 40 million a year. Why did it work? Because it was applied to a narrow problem with known rules, structured data, and a stable environment. However, when the companies tried to use similar expert systems for problems that required human judgment, or dealt with changing environments, they struggled. The ultimate lesson from the AI winter is that AI fails when expectations exceed the readiness of the surrounding system. That historical lesson brings us to today's first major constraint, the physical wall. Because we experience modern AI through simple chat prompts and dashboards, it creates the illusion that AI is lightweight and purely digital. But strategically, AI is intensely physical. Behind the screen is an industrial scale infrastructure stack. AI depends on heavily on chips, data centers, massive amounts of electricity, cooling capacity, and water. While AI may be digital at the point of use, it is highly industrial at the point of production. This physical dependency is becoming a strategic bottleneck. The International Energy Agency projects that global data center electricity consumption could roughly double by 2030, reaching approximately 945 terawatt hours, driven primarily by AI workloads. Furthermore, high density compute generates immense heat, meaning advanced cooling and water systems are required to sustain it. As executives, the question is simply which AI tools you should buy, but what physical and infrastructure dependencies you accept when you build your business around these tools. Power, cooling, geography must now be factored into your risk models. Even in the physical infrastructure, even if the physical infrastructure is available, we immediately hit a second wall, the talent gap. Just because your employees are using AI doesn't mean your organization has true AI capability. There is a vast difference between experimenting with a tool and having the operating discipline to use it strategically. Now, many assume the talent gap means we just need more data scientists. The deeper truth is a mature AI capability requires AI literate judgment across every level of the organization, from executive sponsors down to frontline supervisors. When you give your workforce tools without the internal literacy, you get what's called a hollow adoption. From the outside, it looks like progress, but internally, it breeds inconsistent use, data exposure, and weak governance. McKinsey's 2025 State of the AI research found that while 71% of organizations regularly use generative AI, less than one third actually follow the core practices needed to scale it and capture value. Because modern AI produces answers with polish and fluency, it creates a dangerous automation bias where people trust the system blindly, resulting in a collapse of human verification and decision discipline. To avoid these pitfalls, leadership must implement a strategic course correction. First, we need to define the mission outcome. Start with the business result that you. It is. Yep. To avoid these pitfalls, leadership must implement strategic course correction. First, define the mission outcome. Start with the business result you want, not the tool you bought. Second, map the dependency chain to understand the data, systems, and compute power required. Third, classify the risk level of your use cases so that you know where strict human review is necessary. Fourth, build internal literacy before scaling so your organization can become harder to fool. And finally, establish firm decision rules where you're explicitly deciding where AI should not be used because the risk to trust, brand, or safety outweigh the value. The ultimate executive decision is whether AI will serve your mission or if your organization will simply drift around the technology. A 2025 IBM study found that while 85% of CEOs expect a positive ROI from AI, 50% admitted that rapid investment has already resulted in disconnected technology inside their organizations. Leaderships must shift from pure enthusiasm to operational discipline. Every AI-supported workflow must be tied to measurable outcomes and have an accountable human owner. To conclude, the great AI miscalculation is assuming that access guarantees an advantage. It does not. Advantage comes entirely from alignment. The organizations that survive and thrive will treat AI not as a software to be purchased, but as a capability that must be powered, governed, taught, and measured. Remember, if the mission is unclear, the infrastructure is weak, and the talent cannot steer it, AI will only help the organizations fail faster. The winners will not be the organizations that move the fastest, they will be the ones that move fastest in the right direction. All right, so there's the brief for today. And that just kind of begins what we're going to talk about. As I went through this particular slide deck, now there is other pieces of this puzzle that I want to kind of like reveal when we talk about like AI efficiency. This slide deck was created by NotebookLM, as you can see at the bottom of every slide. The script was also written by NotebookLM to go along with the slides. Did you notice some things, such as while the words and the script sort of matched, there were parts in the script where even though it said move on to the next slide, it wasn't the exact slide, even though the information topically was still present. So there's two things that happened in this particular, we'll say, output. One, AI, or Gemini in this case, just very specifically, did not create this brief from scratch. I, as a human, had to have certain levels of expertise to ask the right question. I was turned on to the AI winter by another colleague of mine who knows more about AI than any other three people that I know. And when I asked him, what should I do to really get up to speed he mentored me and said, learn about AI from 1945 to 2000. And in my research, I discovered the expert systems, the 1980s AI winter, and how those moments failed the business community because of unmet promises. Now, in that, because I was able to ask the right question, I was able to direct the research that Gemini did to come up with all these great examples and details and eventually produce a slide deck, which I'm going to show you right now, kind of behind the scenes. What does that actually look like in the grand scheme of things? All right, so there's this. All right, so what you see here is NotebookLM, which by far I think is the best research tool out there. When I created this, it looked up all these sources for me in here. We'll go to the top of this chat so you can kind of see where we came from. Because what ended up happening was, let me make sure everybody could jump in. I used to understand the call. It's weird. So what ended up happening was I prompted it with an input and what is there, pasted text, this inside the source guide. So I had already understood a certain level of understanding before I got started. And once I understood what I was looking for, I then was able to use that as a baseline for this whole research project. And then as you can see, I dumped in here, this is what I'm doing the briefing about. And from here, it gave me this idea of how this brief could go. And then from there, we talked about what happened in the 1980s and the AI winter specifically, because I wanted to relate to that period of time, which I already knew about, to what's happening today. And in the process, you got this nice brief. Now, what's cool is that it did research. It found all these other sources other than my pasted text there. And over here on the studio side, you can see that it automatically builds all the different resources. So you saw the slide deck, and then it also built the script to go with the slide deck. Now, here's, as you could tell, as I said before, it's not perfect. It is not a fire and forget system. And when we treat it as a fire and forget system, we get a little bit of errors, if you will, in the way it's being done. So when we talk about production, we talk about purpose, like why are we using AI inside our companies? It's to produce things like this quickly, but it doesn't happen quickly if the person who is going into it doesn't have the expertise to guide the research and guide the outputs, and make sure that when it says slide 10 on the script, that's actually slide 10, not slide 15 on the slide deck. Because AI doesn't actually know the difference. It just knows there's slides. And it knows that it built the slides, but actually is not correlating one to the other. It's guessing. It's just guessing. So you need an expert human to help guide it. And then the second thing I want to show you guys today is actually my new website. So I'm using Google Sites because I'm inside the Google ecosystem. And this website was created using ChatGPT. I basically showed it my old site and I said, hey, I need an updated version. Use all the words that you know. And it needs to look professional. And these are the intentions behind it. And it built this. It has everything from my vision, my mission, my values, my tagline. And more importantly, when we talk about functionality, it has 2 bits. One, you can schedule a session, which, let me bring it over. So when you click that, it brings you to this survey. The survey helps guide the applicant to make sure that this is what they're looking for. And when they submit the private survey, this is the interesting that happens. This, through a Google web app, then logs into a Google Sheet for all the leads that are captured from here. Here's the problem. I am not a coder. I do not understand web app or functions or do posts or any of that. I don't understand any of that. All I did was go to Google or go to ChatGPT and say, I want to make a survey, blah, 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 and write it in HTML code. And it did. Then I said I wanted to go log into using Excel sheets, using the web app, because I was aware that it existed. Now, I was aware that it existed. When I tried that prompt before, without suggesting the web app, it suggested to me make.com, because it knows that that's an automation system with a secondary using Zapier, because it knows that these are automation systems. Once I said, no, I want to use web app, it gave me the code to cut and paste, where to put it, how to save it, what pieces of puzzle I need to grab from other places and where to paste it in exactly, by the way. And all I had to do was follow directions and cut and paste. And now I have a fully functional website that has an active form on there that saves leads to my Google Sheet. Way above my pay grade when it comes to doing different types of technical things with coding. Way above my pay grade. So with those two examples, what I really want to express is that no matter your level of what you're doing, you can use the AI to help you create the ultimate checklist and help you walk yourself through the process of doing things you've never done before. This is one of the biggest differences between now and the 1980s. In the 1980s, you got to imagine, this was a time period before Google, right? Before Yahoo.com, before AltaVista, before Netscape, right? This was a time when there was no web. There was nobody on the other side anywhere creating content for other people to consume. That did not exist. And so when they created the first level of AI, which were expert systems, basically, they got a bunch of smart people in a room and they digitized textbooks, essentially is what they did. And it had great success. There was one for medical and there was one for financial. And once you did that, it was able to learn the information and you can get expert responses because you can interrogate it like a query and get generative text back from it that made sense. What you could not do was get it to tell you how to do something like this. So in difference to the 1980s, where you were limited to very specialized and narrow systems, today, AI is the gap, or it is the bridge, I should say, that gets us over every single technical gap that we're coming across, no matter what your skill level is. This turns everyone into a coder, everyone into a developer, everyone into a presenter. It turns everybody into everything nearly instantaneous. This is a huge benefit for every business that is running. Some of the strategic mistakes. So I'm going to get into a little bit of the risk to wrap this up. As you saw in the slide deck, AI is powered by water and electricity. It needs to be powered up and it needs to be cooled down. So the infrastructure that's required just for a simple prompt to get these awesome results is massive, and it's growing. Project Starbase is putting data centers all throughout the United States, mostly along the internet backbone, where most data centers already exist. So, and already those data centers take up water and power. When you have a data centers that are dedicated to only just AI, not just about supporting the web or web services, you now are generating even more power consumption and cooling consumption by whatever means that may be. If, as a company, let's say here's a case study of risk that I really want to drive home today. You're a Fortune 500 company. You have 5,000, we'll say 10,000 employees. Let's make it easy. In the past, every single employee was critical to what you were doing. Assuming we had that nailed down and assuming that every seat turned 3x revenue and there was no waste in their talent. Here comes AI. Suddenly, AI can do all the things that you can do. So you say, well, shoot, I don't need 10,000 people on payroll. I need 5,000 people on payroll who are AI enhanced. And then I can pay for the AI piece to make up for that lack of 5,000 people. So I'm down 50% in payroll, up a little bit in technology. But now my people, the 5,000 people, instead of our 3x or 6x, they're 10x or 20x because of the AI. Sounds like a great idea until the AI data center burns down because it overheats, because it can't find any water. Until the power grid gets hit by a CME, and because it's already overloaded, it wipes out everything, to include the data that was stored. So the question then becomes, what is the risk to supporting talent when you reduce the talent to save on the dollars, you increase the risk you have on the infrastructure that is now around you, when before you didn't rely that heavily on the surrounding infrastructure. So the question is, as a company, where do your investments go at this point? Because would it be wise or not wise to invest in power or electricity or energy surety, right? The ability to consistently get flow of electrons. Well, what about fiber optics, data, dark fiber, telecom? How are you getting to the information to and from? Because you don't have it in your building. It's not with you. It's being managed elsewhere. So we'll be back in the day when we had our own server rooms. Now we have the cloud, quote, that's not here. It's somewhere else. A construction company is building a new development to a farm. Oh, cuts through the T3 trunk that they didn't know was present there. A quarter of the state's internet goes down. Or a catastrophic fire at an AT&T node in Nashville, or the worst, the one in Knoxville, aka the buildings with no windows. Yeah, that. And there goes the entire East Coast internet. Or, correction, creating a divide between the East Coast and the West of the internet, because that's where basically it's a spinal injury of our internet. Understanding the infrastructure and the threats to the infrastructure now become a direct threat to your production and how your company operates if we take this ginormous leap and go all AI, but no people. So the best balance, keep the people. Why fire 5,000 people who are doing 3x when you can have 10,000 people doing 100x? When every person is making 10x to 100x their own payroll, how much more revenue is going to be generated? Because at the end of the day, and this goes back to the slide deck and everything else, it takes human judgment to guide the AI. You fire 5,000 people of your 5,000 experts in your company, you're losing that expertise to guide the AI. Otherwise, You get what's called AI slop, trend slop, slop, however you want to phrase it. And so I will conclude today's, what you call it, briefing with the risk to infrastructure is real. The United States specifically, it's very real. The more companies rely on that infrastructure only, the more in danger the company is. You're not reducing risk by reducing human capital, by increasing technology capital. You're actually increasing risk because now you're losing the expertise needed to guide it and redundancy for if it goes down. I said my piece on how AI can be used, which is still growing. Today or yesterday, I was a web developer. I've never been a web developer before. Day before that, I was a marketer. Never been a marketer before. I even have some AI agents working in the background as we speak that are acting as my sales guy, where they are finding on their own people who would align to what I do, sending them emails, sending them LinkedIn connection requests, sending them a nurturing email funnel, and I don't even know who they are until they sign up, until they either make an appointment or connect with me on LinkedIn. Because the AI is working in the background autonomously around some very narrow parameters. Imagine if every person in your company was given the power to make everything better, faster. What could you do? What could you not do at the end of the day? So with that, thank you so much for listening in and coming to today's seminar on the AI miscalculation. See you then.